Law enforcement for the job they do.
We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. We will. I am here as your president to proclaim before the country and before the world, this monument will never be desecrated. These heroes will never be defaced. Their legacy will never, ever be destroyed. Their achievements will never be forgotten. And Mount Rushmore will stand forever as an eternal tribute to our forefathers and to our freedom. We are the nation that gave rise to the Wright brothers, Harriet Tubman, George Patton, the great Louis Armstrong, Elvis Presley, Ella Fitzgerald. We settled the Wild West, won 2 world wars, landed American astronauts on the moon. Centuries from now, our legacy will be the cities we built, the champions we forged, the good that we did, and the monuments we created. America's destiny is in our sights. America's heroes are embedded in our hearts. America's future is in our hands. And ladies and gentlemen, the best is yet to come.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online. I'm Katrina Pierson, Senior Advisor to President Trump's re-election campaign, and tonight I'll be joined by nationally syndicated talk show host of Stacy on the Right, Stacey Washington, North Carolina's president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation and national spokesperson for the Douglass Leadership Institute, Clarence Henderson, and Baptist minister, former radio and Last month, President Trump signed his executive order on safe policing for safe communities. What are your thoughts on this historic executive action?
Well, Katrina, I'm actually excited about the fact that the president saw fit to do an executive order because he wanted immediate action on this. But it's a local control issue. So the federal government will lead on mandating body cameras and dash cams and eliminating chokeholds and really increasing the amount of training that officers will receive, actually offering a certification process that will standardize the training across all federal agencies that pertain to law enforcement. And then local policing jurisdictions will follow that action by taking similar actions themselves. My point that I want to stress is obviously I'm very happy with what the president has done. As usual, he's leading on this, but policing is a local issue. So Katrina, when we see people blaming President Trump for cities on fire or for lawlessness, they're really misplacing their anger. You have the ability to impact how your policing organization actually interacts with you as a community member through managing your elected officials at the local level, because they're the ones who oversee police departments and their budgets. So the most important thing to take from this is, first, bravo to President Trump. I love the fact that he took recommendations, bipartisan suggestions from all corners and created this executive order. Second, make sure that you're actually controlling the people who are managing your police department. And you can see even more reforms come in but tailored to your specific locale. That's the most important thing you can get out of this.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. I mean, a lot of people like to abdicate the authority of even their own personal responsibility to the President of the United States. And a lot of people are paying attention today. But, in a disappointing but completely unsurprising turn of these events, Democrats refuse to work with the administration and Republicans in Congress to put this important step forward. And it's truly meaningful and lasting reform, and it could be statute today, except we watched this treatment of Senator Tim Scott's Justice Act, and we'll just use that to highlight all of this, just how little Democrats care about meaningful reform. And Clarence, I want to ask you this question because many people have compared a lot of these claims of injustices to those similar to the 1960s, which you were there, you were an activist and participated in some of these lunch sit-ins and many other events during the civil rights movement. Can you share with us a little bit about your experience during that time?
Well, Katrina, when it comes to civil disobedience, there's nothing new under the sun. This journey for me started back when I was 18 years of age. And our movement was a non-violent movement that was dealt with Jim Crow, and we put Jim Crow on trial, and specifically we were integrating a lunch counter. And I never in my life dreamed there would be a shot that was fired that was heard around the world when we exposed some injustice in the United States of America. And we understood that it had needed to be nonviolent because we are a nation of laws. And so we used that to our advantage to integrate the lunch counter and to make changes that we see today, whereas that we as a race of people were thought of as less than, but we proved that we were just the same as anybody else. And so our whole idea was to be seen as what our Constitution says, that we are all created equal, and to step out in faith and change the climate of America. And we were quite successful, and I consider myself to be quite fortunate to have dealt in that endeavor. And when I look at compared to today, we had a plan, and the most important part of that plan was to be nonviolent, to change the laws. And so when we put Jim Crow on trial, Jim Crow was found guilty, and there are no laws in the books in the United States at this point that are in reference to Jim Crow laws.
That's a powerful statement. And, we thank you for your courage and your determination, because here we are today doing a show, broadcasting to millions of people to deliver that message. And the difference between now and then, to your point, is nonviolence. And look at the success that has come from the work that you all have done, back in the 50s, 60s and forward, compared to the damage that's actually being done today. And Reverend Bryant, what message would you like to give to these Democrats who are actually politicizing the Black experience, but have refused for decades to do anything to actually empower the community?
What they are doing, Katrina, in so many ways is reestablishing strongholds that people like Clarence and my parents and even myself, who grew up in the 60s, worked so hard to tear down. That's the most amazing thing about what's going on in our America today. There is a certain stolen valor that is taking place in this country, stealing the valor of people who actually paid the price for our civil rights. People like Clarence Henderson here with us, and of course Stacey Washington, who is coming alongside us, and of course you, who have done all the type of work that you have done in these last 10 years that I have known you in our movement, grassroots movement. I know that there are prices that we have paid. There is dues that we have paid that many people just don't understand. And when we look back into the 60s and we try to compare the advantages that Black folks have in America today to the 60s, Clarence, you and I know that this is not the 60s. We are the greatest triumph in this country as far as Black people are concerned that America can point to. But yet the Democrats have made it their business to make us their mascots and victims of our past. And black people, please hear me. There is no future in our past where we came from. But what we need to be focused on, and this is what this president had us focused on before this coronavirus hit, he had the economy booming, and red, yellow, black, and white Americans of all stripes were able to take advantage of American prosperity. He had this nation booming. And so what we have tried 50 and 60 years into our American past and present, it's time for us to try something different, because evidently, my fellow Americans, black people in particular, this has not worked for us. I do know something that will work: opening up the American economy, getting us back to work again, and making us all prosperous once again. That's what Donald Trump wants to do.
You know, amen to that. And how about just acknowledging where we are today? I think that would be the first step for Black America to at least acknowledge, so that we can move forward. And so thank you all for your comments. Stay right there. We're going to take a quick commercial break and be right back with more Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online.
You have reached the 911 police emergency line. Due to defunding of the police department, we're sorry, but no one is here to take your call. If you're calling to report a rape, please press 1. To report a murder, press 2. To report a home invasion, press 3. For all other crimes, leave your name and number, and someone will get back to you. Our estimated wait time is currently 5 days. Goodbye.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
We know you want to give Donald Trump 4 more years to fight for you in Washington, but he isn't just up against Joe Biden. He's up against the Democrat fundraising machine, and he needs all the help he can get. Don't just assume because his opponent hasn't completed a single sentence that this campaign is over. Crazy things happen, like this woman becoming Speaker of the House. Support the president today by texting Trump to 88022. Donald Trump is counting on every single one of his supporters to text Trump to 88022 now.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Thanks to President Trump, criminal justice reform gave nonviolent offenders a second chance at life and the American dream.
He has given $100 million to HBCUs for scholarships and research.
And he has done all this for us in less than 1 term. Imagine what he can achieve with 4 more years.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online. And now I want to talk about something that really animates me, you guys. I mean, these woke white liberals out there screaming in the faces of Black police officers, deciding who's Black or not based upon their own filters of pity. And this is, in fact, inherently racist. We all know this. But if you really think about it, you know, just how awkward must it be to be a white liberal who thinks that they know best for us, Stacey? I mean, we've seen the politicization of, and even the monetization of Black Lives Matter, this movement that sort of swept across the country. And you even have corporations donating millions of dollars to, you know, these official committees and organizations that they really know very little about itself, or its board members for that matter. The staff, I mean, nobody knows really much of anything, and they're just dumping all of this money into it. And so what do you think about this new woke capitalism brand?
So first thing I want to point out is that companies that have engaged in this prior to this current unrest have not been spared the ire of Black Lives Matter. Nike and Target are 2 of the most woke companies on the planet, and they have not been spared having their buildings burned to the ground and vandalized by their cohorts in the Black Lives Matter movement, who they've funded, who they've validated, who they've elevated that voice into the American culture. So it doesn't pay to link up arms with Black Lives Matter. Now, it is an actual political front group that simply funnels money from the donor into an account that holds for 30 days. If the money lasts there for longer than 30 days, it then flows through to Bernie Sanders, who's not Black, Elizabeth Warren, again, not Black, and other candidates on the left who are running for president or office somewhere in the federal bureaucracy. So it's not paying off. But can I just talk a little bit about what isn't being discussed right now? If Black lives really matter to this group or to these companies, then they should be donating to causes that would actually improve the lives of Black Americans day by day. These are school choice initiatives. The president has opportunity zones. Companies could invest in opportunity zones and see a return on their money and sow seeds into the Black community that will bear fruit, not just this year or next year, but 20 years down the line. But I have more. I'm interested in better schools, public and private. I'm interested in charter schools. I'm interested in these special kind of zone schools that are like, they're magnet schools. So you have a school for the arts or for communications, and these little gifted kids who early on they show a propensity for something, they get funneled into this and it changes the trajectory of their lives. I'm also thinking, what about GoFundMe? We've seen plenty of people from every area of life see someone who has a need, start a GoFundMe and radically impact that person for good. Why don't companies say, this is our hashtag, this is what we want you to donate to. We're going to double the money, or we're going to triple the money, or whatever they're going to do with it. We're going to contribute. We want you to contribute. And when we do that together, we're going to improve the lives of the people in this particular area. What about a GoFundMe for the businesses that have been burned down? Because their insurance certainly isn't going to pay to rebuild their business. I could go on and on and on, Katrina. We could do a whole Black Voices for Trump, Trump Online. I could speak the whole hour about ideas, not just mine, but yours and CL's and Clarence's and do I have to name all of the wonderful people we know who have these brilliant ideas? I could sit here and list off all the ways that corporations in America could help not just the Black community, but Americans in general. But we'd probably be wasting our time because those great ideas have nothing to do with the political agenda to unseat this president, and therefore they're not worth discussing. And that to me is the problem.
Yeah, you make a great point about, other things that these corporations could be investing in, things that are, could produce tangible results and not just pad the pockets of these activists. And, not to mention the white liberal radicals who are using Black America and organizations like BLM as a shield to push the extreme Marxist agenda. We've seen more and more Black Americans speak up recently. And there's one particular I want to show everyone tonight. So let's take a look at this.
How many people really look into the mission statement of Black Lives Matter? But I did. And when you look into it, there's a couple things that jump out to me. And I'm a Black man who's been Black, and my life has mattered since 1974. And this organization was founded in 2013. I'm proud of you. But I've been fighting this fight for me and for others a lot longer. Two things. My family structure is so vital, important to me. Not only the one I grew up in, but the one I'm trying to create right now. Being a father and a husband, that's my mission in life right now. How do I reconcile that, what I just told you, with this mission statement that says, quote, we dismantle the patriarchal practice. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement. When I know statistics, when I know my reality, forget statistics. I knew this before I even went to Columbia and saw these same statistics that I'm going to read to you right now. That children from single parent homes versus two parent homes. The children from the single parent homes, this is in 1995, I was reading this. 5 times more likely to commit suicide. 6 times more likely to be in poverty. 9 times more likely to drop out of high school. 10 times more likely to abuse chemical substances. 14 times more likely to commit rape. 20 times more likely to end up in prison. And 32 times more likely to run away from home. I knew that. You know why I knew it? Because a lot of my friends didn't have family structures that were nuclear like mine, and they found themselves outside of their dreams and goals and aspirations. So when I see that, or as a mission statement for Black Lives Matter, it makes me scratch my head.
Wow. So that was very powerful. That clip has since gone viral. And I've seen a lot of support. And I just have to say, I don't know of any other person out there who has spoken so clearly and succinctly about his position on where he stands as a Black man on Black Lives Matter. And Clarence, what do you think about the mission statement? And do you think that most people or corporations even know anything about what or who they're supporting?
Well, Katrina, as I looked at that video clip, it was like me looking in the mirror. I came from a 2-parent family. I'm going to show you about priorities. My parents only had a 3rd grade education. My dad worked 6 days a week, went to church on Sunday. My mother never worked anything but a part-time job, because the idea was that we needed to raise these 3 sons the correct way. And so I saw this hard-working man go out and take care of his family while my mother stayed at home to raise the sons. And so it made a better environment for me. And I can remember back during that time when there were some families that were not as fortunate that did not have a 2-parent home, and the kinds of problems and things that they got into. And so when we look at America, what we see is a country that has lived under that kind of reality. And for the mission statement for Black Lives Matter to be single parenthood or getting rid of the patriarchal family is quite frankly ridiculous, because the foundation of America is that when you look at the Black race especially, we have had most success when we had families. I look back from the time that I was born all the way up into the 60s, when we had a very high rate of family tradition and family values, and it changed everything. And I learned how to compete rather than compare. So what came out of that was that I am the only child, only person in my immediate family that graduated from college, but yet my father was a university unto himself, because he was a self-made man, worked for nobody but himself after he left the farm. And so I saw what it was required for me as a man to make it in this lifetime. And so when I hear Black Lives Matter saying things like that, a motto like that, they have no frame of reference. They have not studied history. This journey started for me when I was 18 years of age in 1960. And I would love to sit down and share with some of them the reality of what is required for us to be successful in this country. Is like we should compete rather than compare. And after all of those things, I had the opportunity to spend almost 30 years being in business for myself in the financial services industry, which is an industry that most people do not enter, where I dealt with mortgages, investments, things like that. So I am very proud to have, and very fortunate to have had a 2-parent family that taught me the values of what life is all about.
Well, you know, I think that your very existence really speaks volumes to that, because you were successful by doing peaceful protests, and here we have this nuclear family that's completely dismantled, and that product is now out there being violent and oppressive. And so I think that speaks volumes.
Katrina, if I could say one other thing.
Sure.
My father, I never heard him say anything against any race of people. He worked very diligently, very well with the other races. As a matter of fact, when I grew up, we did not have a TV. And one of the places where my father had rented a place to do mechanical work, the guy that owned the building was a white guy. And when we used to have fights back during that time, my dad would go, his friend who was white would invite him to his house to watch TV. And with my brother, younger middle brother, myself, and I can remember distinctly one fight where my dad is pulling for Joe Louis, and his friend Colin Marsh is pulling for Rocky Marciano, and they were the greatest of friends. So I have this lifetime of seeing how it's better to live that way than the other way. As Dr. King said, unless we learn to live together as brothers, we'll perish together as fools.
And that is so true. You know, in that vein, I want to talk next about something that the mainstream media, you know, refuses to acknowledge during all of this, and this is that woke white liberal, you know, elected Democrats, if you will, how they're turning our experiences and our heritage really into a political prop, and it's all based on that false narrative. And Reverend Bryant, you know, I'm sure that many of these misguided liberals think that they might be helping, but really have taken away, you know, Black America's agency, and insist that they believe that they alone can help us. And so what do you think about this whole white savior routine that we see Democrats use on our behalf?
The progressive socialist Democrats are actually stealing the birthright of America, particularly American Black people. When we destroy our heritage and try to rearrange and redefine our history. The fact of my life's matter is that I was born in Confederate Memorial Hospital in Shreveport, Louisiana. back in 1956. And we were very fortunate to be born in hospitals back then. In the height of Jim Crow, headed toward 1964, 65, where I'd be 8 and 9 years old when that bill was signed. My point is this: all of the strides and all of the accomplishments from there to where we are right now, speaking on behalf of a president of the United States and encouraging others to take a look at both sides of this conversation. A black man doing this, as I am doing and Clarence is doing, and certainly black women doing this back in the days when I was born in Confederate Memorial Hospital, it was not possible. Yet all of the advances that we as black people have in this country have occurred while all of those monuments that they want to tear down were standing right in their place. They have not hindered our progress. And certainly if I took off of my birth certificate, I was born in Confederate Memorial Hospital, that would truly change the very story, the very nature of my history. And America is doing the very same thing to you. You cannot leave out portions of your history and expect the truth of who you are to be. What do you replace your Confederate history with? After all, the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, you can't understand America without either one of them. You certainly can't understand modern America without understanding first what the Civil War was totally about. It is a part of our American heritage. It is a part of our birthright. Why deny any of it? Let's face the truth, because Jesus told us this. The truth will make you free. That was true then, it's true now, and it will be true forever.
You know, that's absolutely right. And, you know, one of the most profound things that someone said to me personally, it was very simple, and it was the fact that your life is the total of the sum of the choices that you've made throughout it. And that really stuck with me. And I share that with every young person that I come across, because when we look at, you know, this idea that somehow that our country is racist, after having elected a black man as president twice, it's something that's very illogical to assume. And so I always point everyone to look within, because your life is very, very personal, and it all starts right there at home. So thank you all. We're going to take one last break, and we'll be right back with more Black Voices for Trump Real Talk. Stay right there.
People are really looking for something. I think you have to go out and really work hard.
You've sort of become like a folk hero.
There are no better builders than we have in New York, and a big percentage of that is black and minority folks, and I'm very proud of it.
I say to the African American people that have to suffer, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it.
The black unemployment rate, the lowest in history.
1.3 million jobs, more than 1.3 million jobs added for African Americans. You talk about the First Step Act, thousands of people released from jail, 90% of them being African American.
And I want to thank our incredible president.
Funding for historically black colleges and universities. Opportunity zones, almost 9,000 of those in marginalized areas. This president has done more for African Americans in a matter of 2 to 3 years than any president in my lifetime.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Antifa is destroying our communities, rioting, looting. Yet Joe Biden kneels down and his staff sends money for bail. And Biden fails to stand up to the radical leftists fighting to defund and abolish the police. With Biden kneeling to the left, we'd have chaos in the streets. President Trump is standing up for us, keeping our communities safe, protecting minority-owned businesses, and always standing for our flag.
No better example of that than Joe Biden himself. Over 4 decades, Joe Biden has been soft on words, but hostile on working Americans, and deadly even for Black America. whether it's abortion or immigration, school choice, prison to poverty. Joe Biden has been a clear and present danger to Black Americans. Reverend Brian, can you explain for our viewers why Biden hopes that Black America forgets his decades-long experience of disastrous policies that have harmed the community?
All America need do, Katrina, is go back to 1991, when Joe Biden and Ted Kennedy led, according to now Justice Clarence Thomas, a high-tech lynching of a Black nominee for the Supreme Court. Joe Biden has been that way ever since Joe Biden has been in politics. He has been a total contradiction of the term Joe Biden. He wants to be everything to every man, and that is exactly why he is only polled maybe a little bit over 1% every time he has run for president. Joe Biden has never shown himself to be a national leader, and surely America has never thought of him as a national leader. And the only thing that's helping him now is the slanted, progressive, liberal media that is pulling him out ahead. If you think for 1 second someone who does not have the courage or intestinal fortitude to face today's issues like President Trump does head on can be president of the United States in this America today, you are wrong. We need someone with strength of character, backbone, and strength of conviction. Donald John Trump has shown himself to be that guy. Joe Biden has never shown himself to be that guy. And the character that you saw back in 1991, when he was indeed performing, as Clarence Thomas said in his words, a high-tech lynching, he is still doing that today, Black Americans, by trying to fearmonger you into thinking that if, in fact, you break out of the bondage that you have been in for 50 years, that he helped create, that somehow they're going to put y'all back in chains. That's Joe Biden. Don't buy it.
Yeah, you know, whether it's 1991, 1974, or 2020, Stacey, we just found out that Joe Biden's education plan is to put teachers first, not students. But he's played this, particularly large role in many of the policies that have hurt Black Americans, whether it be mass incarceration, the design that tore those fathers away from their families, or even, destructive trade deals that took away jobs from working people. Is November 2020 the last opportunity for America to hold Joe Biden accountable for these policies, or should they?
Well, Katrina, I think the appropriate phrasing there, you just used it, holding him accountable. The man has run for president. This is his third time. He's been in politics longer than I've been alive, and I have 2 college-age kids. So I just want to make sure that people understand the breadth and length of his service to this country as a politician, and then contrast that time with the lack of accomplishments. So in the short, almost 4 years that President Trump has been in office, he has a list of accomplishments that's literally longer than my arm, and I'm over 6 feet tall. But then you contrast that with Joe Biden. This is a man who literally, if you go back on his signature achievements, they're now being ripped apart by the very constituencies that he claimed he was going to help. He tore apart the Black community with mass incarceration. He refused to allow Black kids trapped in inner city failing schools the opportunity to have school choice. He also has made statements about education that if we integrated America's school system, public schools, that it would make them into jungles. It would make them, the kind of language that's reserved for a trip to the zoo. He characterized Black children in that way. He's also said things about, he learned about It would make them, the kind of language that's reserved for a trip to the zoo. He characterized Black children in that way. He's also said things about, he learned about it would make them, the kind of language that's reserved for a trip to the zoo. He characterized Black children in that way. He's also said things about, he learned about
thing about that. So can you explain that? And where if it was voted on by the council to put it there, then where did, from that point, how did it jump to the county or on the state level?
So what was in the newspaper was totally wrong on a bunch of different accounts.
It would make them, the kind of language that's reserved for a trip to the zoo. He characterized Black children in that way. He's also said things about, he learned about